Hi friends, my today's topic is about Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. In this, we are given a brief introduction about the century which he lived, and it also depicts the life of England and the high class people or the people lived during that time. So, the question can be of any form. There are three or four forms discussed here. First one is write a note on Chaucer as the chronicle of the 14th century England, or a cross section of English life in the 14th century. Is this an apt description of the prologue, or Chaucer's work reflects his century not in fragments but completely? And Chaucer stands in much same as the relation to the life of his time as Pope does to the earlier phases of the 18th century and Tennyson to the Victorian era. Discuss. For all these questions, we just have one answer. Okay, let's move on to the answer. In the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer has given a picture of the 14th century social and religious conditions. The prologue is in fact a cross section of English life in 14th century. Chaucer was a true literary artist who realized that the calling of the poet is to faithfully reflect the age in his works. In this aspect, he can be compared to Pope in the 18th century and Tennyson in the Victorian age. Pope's essay on man criticism, the rape of the lock and Danciad are all expressions of the literary tendencies, fashions and manners of his age. Likewise, for nearly half a century, Tennyson was not only a man and a poet, he was the voice of a whole people, expressing in exquisite melody their doubts and their faith, their griefs and their triumphs. His Locksley's Hall, Princess, the Palace of Art, Mouth, Idylls of the King, and In Memoriam all bear witness to the above observation of W.J. Long. Like Pope and Tennyson, Chaucer too is the voice of his age. He represents the age not in fragments but as a whole. In this respect, he differs from his such contemporaries as Wycliffe, Gower, Langland. Wycliffe concentrated on religious reformation. Gower expressed the fear of the wealthier classes on account of the peasants' revolt, and Langland highlighted the rampant corruption in the church. But it was reserved for Chaucer to take within the range of his brush the whole of the English society. In his works, he showed the world as it did exist in the England of his days. A whole world of reality, a world various and beautiful, hitherto kept away from literature. Chaucer gives us a microcosm of English society in his prologue. All classes of people are here represented except the highest and the lowest. The 14th century English society could be broadly divided into three groups. First, there were people representing agricultural, feudal, and chivalric class. Second, those associated with the church and the religion. And third were those who represented various trades and professions and who were the symbols of the growing urbanization in the medieval England. The chivalric spirit of the age of Chaucer is represented by the knight, the squire, and the yeoman. The knight represents the fading chivalric of the Middle Ages. He has fought in as many as 15 mortal battles. He is a symbol of all knightly virtues. The squire is the representation of the newly emerging chivalric spirit. Being a young man, he cherishes youthful feelings. Consequently, he cannot only joust but also compose songs and dance. The yeoman is a sincere servant of the knight. The franklin and the reeve are the representatives of the age-old feudalism. The franklin holds land for his lord, but more probably in his own right. The reeve acts as a manager of an estate and makes full use of his power for his own profit. The plowman is the lowest in the feudal hierarchy. He is a sincere laborer of the fields. Eight of Chaucer's pilgrims represent the ecclesiastical class. They are the prioress, her chaplain, the monk, the friar, the clerk, the parson, the summoner, and the partner. With the exception of the clerk of Oxford and the parson, all the ecclesiastical characters represent the decaying religious conditions of the 14th century England. The monk does not bother for his calling. He is more worldly than religious. The prioress is an affected person who cares more about fine manners and that about austerity. Her chaplain is a lusty fellow. The friar is acquainted more with rich people than with the poor and the sick. The summoner argues that so long as person has money, he need not fear the curse of the archdeacon. The clerk of Oxford is a sincere seeker of knowledge. He loves books more than worldly things. The parson is a true well-wisher of his parishioners. The trade and other professions are represented by the doctor, the sergeant of law, the manciple, the miller, the merchant, the haberdasher, the weaver, the carpenter, the dyer, the four taken collectively, and of course the wife of Bath, who also represent a class of women. All these characters represent their respective professions popular in Chaucer's time. The marine trade, however, is represented by the shipman. Beside the people belonging to the various classes of society, Chaucer has referred the various contemporary incidents and social conditions. The most important event was the Black Death, which struck England 4 times. One half of the population, including two-thirds of the London people, had been killed. Chaucer throws some light on the inadequacy of the medieval science which depended more on the astronomy than on medical diagnosis. The doctor, though a perfect practitioner, the most careful about money which he collects during pestilence. The events present in the church have been sufficiently revered by the Chaucer. The monk, the monk cares more about pleasure than about a life of austerity. Likewise, the friar, the partner, and the summoner all are most corrupt and impious persons. Extravagance in dress was highly prevalent in Chaucer's England. The love of display is shown in several characters. The knights' houses are decked out with more finery than is knight himself, with curious harness as in saddles and bridles, cruppers and breastplates, covered with precious clothing, and with the bars and plate of golds and silver. The squire is embroidered, and his garments are all full of fresh flowers, white and red. The monk wears a coat the sleeves of which are bordered with the fur of finest quality. The wife of Bath wants to be seen by all. Her kerchiefs are full fine of texture and weigh 10 pounds. All the characters are shown to wear clothes according to their rank, position, and profession. Then there are also reference of food habits the people. The monk loves a roast swan. The franklin keeps his table ever ready with partridges and fish. The cook loves London ale. He can cook chickens with the marrow bones. The summoner loves garlic and onions. The pilgrims have special love of wealth and gold. This shows the growing commercialization and materialistic greed of the people, particularly the religious class. Thus, it may safely be said about the prologue that it is a cross section of the 14th century England. There is much of medi- uh, medi- uh, medieval atmosphere and color in it. It may be read as a word picture of medieval society, but the prologue should be read with a difference of medieval angle too. Chaucer is a poet of profound insight and far reaching vision. He is also the morning star of Renaissance in England. He discerned the breakup of medieval society with keen observation. The prologue has its supreme interest today because it is the picture of the vanishing age for which a class of readers might have a nostalgic yearning, and also because it reveals the coming age. The widespread corruption of the medieval church has its own significance apart from the rottenness of the church itself. It signifies a revolt against the spirit of the Middle Age. Chaucer has tolerant spirit and of the age of unperturbed spirit. The monk makes his earthly life his chief objective. The friar discards the vow of poverty. The Franklin identifies happiness with the pursuit of sensual pleasure. All this is significant. The spirit of otherworldliness which characters all sorry all this is significant. The spirit of the worldliness which characterized and distinguished the Middle Ages and has lost its attraction in Chaucer's age. This is the new spirit reflected in the prologue. It marks the advent of the modern age. So, when you asked to write any essay on Chaucer's prologue, or even the 14th century England during Chaucer's time, you can write only this essay. You need not learn from many other materials. This single essay is necessary for you. So, if you follow this essay, you can score a good marks. So, thanks for watching.